solved a lot of the big problems. And I know everybody thinks that the planet's burning down and that life is going to end imminently. That's part of the collective memory that we've inherited, and we're still echo chambering it out. Everything's going to end tomorrow. Freak out. The sky is falling. That's a bad habit that we've gotten into. There is a sense of interacting with life that is always saying, I'm missing something. I know it's there. And to me, Dhaata is a wonderful way of filling in what's missing. The ground around us that is so obvious that it's deceptively simple. It's so profoundly simple that our brain just wants to say, oh, I know that it is. And there's just such an is-ness there that it has a moment. And that's what Dhaata does for me. This is even more foundational than bliss. Bliss is a side effect of love. Love is, to me, the ultimate is-ness, the ultimate reality that everything else flows from love. So if we're thinking about the love of unity that decides to have a play of diversity, knowing that all that diversity will resolve into unity again, it's all a play of love. And so Dhaata, there's no beginning, there's no end.
Totally. One of the joys of the Adityas. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 1 of Fiona's Adityas podcast. Adityas are an ancient, indigenous and intrinsic approach to Vedic astrology. It draws on traditional Indian symbology and mythology from sources such as the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Mahabharata, the Rig Veda, and more. And Ernst Wilhelm has been teaching the Adityas on his website, astrology-videos.com, for about a year. And each Aditya is a complex of symbology built from a retinue that accompanies the sun in the Aditya's chariot as it transits through the sky each month. The crew includes a Rishi, a Naga, a Rakshasa, a Yaksha, a Gandharva, and an Apsara. So this allows for an extremely rich and nuanced insight into a person's birth chart and their unique living story. I have fallen completely in love with this approach. And for that reason, for about 4 months, I have invited my friend and my fellow seeker, Nadamayi, to host with me a monthly discussion about each Aditya, timed for its solar transit. And I do that for my patrons on patreon.com. And each month is so rich that I always want to hear more. And for this reason, I decided to start the podcast today to capture some of the essence of this rich conversation. And none of this would be possible without the work that my patrons have been doing on the greatness of Saturn. For about 2 years, we've had a book club studying this great text from Dr. Robert Svoboda. And I want to begin our podcast today with 2 quotes that help me understand the power of mythology a little bit better. The first one is, India's genius is in its ability to connect many, sometimes contradictory aspects of what is into a single multidimensional substance. Most of India's major myths are equipped to convey cosmological data, archetypal material, cultural and social taboos, medical information, and spiritual and mystical matters to anyone who knows how to access it. And then a second quote is explaining that a Vrata Katha is a class of living story that is told ritually on a sacred day as part of a vow. Such stories of difficulties and their ritual resolutions invite listeners to resolve their own difficulties in similar ritual fashions. Every time we hear these stories, we have yet another opportunity to be reborn as a living receptacle for the juices of life. So it is in this spirit that I welcome my friend Nadamayi to the microphone. Hi, Nadamayi. Are you inspired by the healing power of myths as well?
Continuously. What is this world but a projected myth of our own making? I feel that the myths give us a better map to work with.
Yeah. Now, Nadamayi and I are going to dive right in to this podcast. And before we get started, I just wanted to remind everyone of two things. One is we're not teaching this stuff, we're not experts. Please go to Ernst Wilhelm's website if you want to learn about this type of symbology and this type of astrology. He has a well over 200-page compilation of Aditya stories there on the website and more than 100 videos detailing each member of all of these Aditya crews. So we're just students and seekers like you. I'm a young learner in this field and I just can't contain my enthusiasm and I want to share it around. In Australia, I would say, please recognise my L plates. When we learn to drive, all of our learner drivers put a plastic bright yellow L on their car so that we know that they're learning. And if you can see me in that way, that I am just a devoted beginner and an enthusiastic acolyte. And the other thing that I wanted to share with you before we start is that Nadamayi and I are inviting you into our chat. It's an unstructured and hopefully insightful snippets of the things that we find meaningful about each of the Adityas as they come along. It's not exhaustive by any means, so there'll be heaps of territory that we leave out. But hopefully you're going to enjoy becoming part of our conversation each month. So without further ado, Nadamayi, can I begin by asking you to set the scene for us a little bit about how you understand the current Aditya that we've been looking at, Dhaata Aditya? How do you connect with that Aditya?
There is a sense of interacting with life that is always saying, I'm missing something. I'm missing something, but I know it's there, the corner of your eye. So and you keep doing that. And to me, Dhaata is a wonderful way of filling in what's missing. The ground around us that is so obvious, we take it so completely for granted that we forget entirely how to even look at it and comprehend it. And it's easy to see why we take it for granted because it just seems so simple. That it's deceptively simple. It's so profoundly simple that our brain just wants to say, oh, I know that. I get that. That's easy for me. But then it's let out, sit with that. And then something just starts to emerge from behind the haze that is so profound and so foundational. And there's just such an is-ness there that it has a moment. And that's what Dhaata does for me.
I love that. Because it is the first Aditya and it is foundational. But one of your access points into understanding Dhaata Aditya is that it is almost a firmament behind the scenes or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's start even before Dhaata.
Yes.
And say, what is it that we take the most for granted as we're little children here frolicking on planet Earth? Given that we are born into a somewhat normative environment. Okay, I know there are many exceptions to the rules, and I don't want to in-group, out-group anyone, but we all know there's a template. And in that template, there's a child that is born to an adoring caregiver, typically manifesting feminine energy. And what that child values the most and takes the most for granted is love from the mother. It is absolutely essential for healthy mammal development. And every child will utterly dismiss it as unimportant as they're developing their own I am-ness. And it's, oh, the sun shining isn't what makes me grow. I make me grow. And that's fine. That's developmental in nature. But the real truth is that mother's love supports healthy development. And the mother is ideally stabilized by a strong fatherly framework so that she can focus on that child. And she doesn't have to be guarding the perimeter at the same time, right? So it's this, and Dhaata describes all that essential family unit, life unit, those components. But when we come to the Adityas, love is the foundation. We see it coming through in different ways through all these Adityas. And Dhaata being the foundational one is saying, here's how life begins. And when love is flowing in a good ebb and flow, yin-yanging nicely, then this is what it looks like in the start, in the little seed bed, in the nursery. And that's where we begin with the story of love as it flows through all the Adityas.
There's so much to pick up on there. One of the places that I thought you were going to go there at the beginning was that this Aditya comes from Parjanya, the previous Aditya. And that's one of the things that I'm loving in experiencing, learning the Adityas is how blended they are together, how one really naturally flows into the next one. And Parjanya, being the end of the Aditya cycle, had a sense of surplus. It's the god of rain. And there was extra, like everything that we have, that we need, is all being satiated, and we have more than we need. We're self-sustaining. And this is what produces Dhaata. So I think it is hard to talk about Dhaata without talking about Parjanya. And then I thought another place that you're going to go about what we take for granted is when there's a new human life is a uterus. There's always a uterus, like that just mammals don't come out of nowhere. And Dhaata has, for me, some kind of uterus stuff to it. It's the ability to create a new life and to have the resources enough for the mother and surplus and extra that is going to be available to this child. And then that child can draw on those resources. And the mother usually will give those resources even before she feeds herself. She's going to feed the child. So Dhaata has that kind of love that you have for a new life, that you're so invested in that life growing that you would give all of your resources to that. And that's the other thought that I had when you were speaking about the child taking the love for granted. I think one of the things I've learned most from being a mother is that I take the love for granted, like the love that one feels for one's child is a love that it doesn't need to be named. It's not the kind of love that you need to say, I love you, which is always really nice. But as a mother, you don't need to say it. It's so obvious to you, or this has been my experience, that it's such a foundational experience of love, a very service-orientated, growing love that is so fundamental. It doesn't, from the mother's perspective, need to be questioned. It's just the experience of wanting this child to grow. So I got lots of thoughts bouncing off what you were just saying there.
And I love what you're saying about, so it came from Parjanya, and then it came from the uterus. And when we're talking about this circle of love, there's no beginning and there's no end. And I'll add, it's not truly a circle when it's going well, it's a spiral. That Parjanya will not feed into the same Dhaata that it did 1 year ago.
Yeah.
It will now create the next spiral, which coils against the one before and has resonance all the way around. So those coils are still informing one another as they go around, but it's never the same circle twice. And the through line of love, that's the beautiful resonance of this gospel, if we want to call it that, is that directly looks at the love instead of making the love indirect. So many teachers say, oh, it's the bliss of God. This is even more foundational than bliss. Bliss is a side effect of love. Love is, to me, the ultimate is-ness, the ultimate reality. And that's how my spiritual framework is oriented, that everything else flows from love. So if we're thinking about the love of unity that decides to have a play of diversity, knowing that all that diversity will resolve into unity again, it's all a play of love. The exiting of love, the illusion that there isn't love, the suffering that comes from thinking there isn't love, searching for love again, coming back and going, oh, that's even better. And then the closer you get, there's this acceleration that goes back to love. And so Dhaata, there's no beginning, there's no end.
Totally. One of the joys of the Adityas. Now, there's so many things for us to touch on. I'm going to try, maybe, I said there'd be no structure, but I'm thinking that we should spend a few moments here on the deity, Dhaata itself. And I'm wondering if you would like to say anything about Dhaata and Vidhātā, or Dhaata and the 4 wives phases of the moon, or Dhaata and Lakshmi. So if I fan out a little bit, some of the deity stories there. Any favorites?
We have to start with Dhaata as the giver, the generator, the bearer of life, unconditionally. And then comes Vidhātā, his brother, who is the differentiator that allocates that life according to merit, according to need, according to appropriateness. The mother's love for an infant is going to be very different than a mother's love for other stages of development. And that's Vidhātā saying, don't bottle feed a 10-year-old, and so on. So the developmental stages of life are so tied into Dhaata is just given, like the shining sun, and Vidhātā is saying, this one doesn't get as much energy today because they stayed up past midnight. This one doesn't get as much energy because they ate junk food when they stayed up past midnight. And this one gets a full portion of the day's energy because they obeyed the laws of health yesterday and the day before, and so on. That's the Vidhātā principle. Life is just flowing. How are we dharmically or adharmically working with it? And so Vidhātā is portioning all that up very nicely.
And it's essential, isn't it? Because once we decide that we're going to grow something, it becomes our circle of responsibility or our circle of influence. And Dhaata has that responsibility then to grow that child or grow that life, grow that love. And in order to do that, just by drawing that circle of responsibility, if other things that I can't get involved with right now because this has to be the focus, which I think is another uterus thing. There's only one fertilized egg in there, and it doesn't matter if you want to put others in there for happening, because the uterus is, no, this is my Vidhātā now. This is my circle of responsibility, is this life form. So yeah, it's like the Venn diagrams that you feel responsible for yourself, your child, your family, your community, your country, whatever it is. There's all of these circles that one feels responsible for. One has that love of bearing devoted to that particular space. And see Vidhātā as being what helps us draw that circle. Or just a consequence.
Well, I think Dhaata is really helpful, because if we're disobeying that law with all even the best intentions, if I'm allocating resources and I'm missing something that is more central to my responsibility, then I get depleted. then I get scattered. That's a real reflection moment and say, why is the life force not flowing in me to do this thing? What am I missing? And then when we get back into focus and we say, oh my gosh, I wasn't taking care of my inner concentric circle enough, be it my personal body or the life forms that depend directly on me. Maybe I was neglecting them to go outside the home and do more things outside the home to the neglect of this, or I was doing too much of this to the neglect of this, then the energy just doesn't flow and we start getting burned out. But then once we understand what is and is not, where our energy flows are meant to go, then the energy starts flowing again and we have what we need. And because one of the principles is that Dhaata does take care of and bear everything. And Vidhātā does give allocations. It's up to us to know when we're in our allocation or when we're going outside our lane. And so that takes a lot of real discernment and real living with eyes wide open and not going into denial and saying, it's really okay if I doom scroll for an hour before bedtime. It's not going to affect how I treat my family and friends and dear ones. That Vidhātā is like, I give you enough for what you are responsible for. It's up to you to spend it wisely.
Yeah, and there's a beautiful story about Dhaata and Vidhātā that involves Uttaṅka. Do you want to have a go at that myth?
You need to do the setup because honestly, like the preamble to that thing, how did it even begin? All
right, I will do my bit. This is my memory of that story is that Uttaṅka is a student of a guru. He's a great student, a good student. He comes to the end of all of his learning and he wants to present his guru with a gift. And the guru doesn't need anything at all. So he says, I suppose you can ask my wife. And the guru's wife wants these enchanted, precious earrings. And Uttaṅka is such a good student that off he goes on this impossible quest. And he does manage to procure the earrings from I think it's from a queen. So like they're already in the possession of someone really important. But somehow Uttaṅka does already get that and he's bringing them back. So from his perspective, his quest is just about done. He's going to satisfy his guru. And he just needs to rest on the road and take some water. So he kneels down at the river and puts the earrings just on the ground in front of him and takes some fresh water from the river. And in that moment, a naga comes, a serpent from the underworld, comes up and grabs a hold of the earrings and plunges right back down into the underworld, and which Uttaṅka has to follow. And he burrows down and down into the layers of the underworld following this naga. And along the way, he meets up with various creatures, and it's all very symbolic. Reminds me of Alice in Wonderland or David Lynch dream sequence, something kind of crazy. The first thing he sees is our part of the story. He sees two women weaving on a loom, one with white cloth and one with black thread. And then he sees a wheel with 12 spokes and he sees 6 boys turning the wheel. And then he goes on to see this very large man and he sees another man on an elephant, and there's a whole significance of the rest of the story because that came up in Dhaata Aditya as well. So they're all crisscrossing these stories. But suffice to say, he does manage to get the earrings back. And he comes back to his guru with this great gift. And but he says to his guru, I don't even know what happened down there. And the guru is able to enlighten him. Did you want to take it from there, Nadamayi? But you don't have to.
I'm going to refer to my notes. Okay. I'm going to say that I have it perfectly memorized. Let me just say parenthetically that mythology is easy to remember if you are a genius like Fiona who uses mind maps and draws them that become your memory palace. But until I do that exercise myself, it's very difficult to remember all the elements because they're non-linear, right? It's not that. And so it's like really need to create that memory palace for myself to remember all the elements. So thank you for doing such a wonderful job there. And that's probably part of the reason mythology is so ephemeral to us. It escapes, it slips, and it's like hard to get fixed in our minds.
But it's also why it's so addictive or so powerful, isn't it? Because it's stories and it's images, and it is like a dream sequence. So you just get these flashes that you really connect to. And then the mind is like, where does that link to? What story does that go in? So
Yeah,
it's all part of the design.
it's all part of the design, and that's all absolutely essential. Okay, so the two women weaving, as you said, that's the part that we're talking about here. They are Dhaata and Vidhātā, and they're weaving black and white threads, which are
That's right.
night and day. So right there, we see the Dhaata principle and the Vidhātā principle in the way light is given to the earth. We could even say that Vidhātā is the turning of the earth so that the light changes and the darkness changes.
Mind blown. Okay, so I might be able to scribble a mind map here or there, but Nadamayi, that's brilliant. Love it.
Well, and so they're weaving that. They're weaving that. And that is also, let us remember that the yin-yang symbol is typically depicted in black and white. Why? Because there is a time to be extrovert and there is a time to be introvert. A time to plant, a time to reap. You got to know when to hold them. You got to know when to fold them. Okay, this is about knowing when to use your yang energy and when to use your yin energy. That is essential.
Yeah.
And that's enough, right? Like we could just sit with that and say,
I know, that is
"Don't
enough."
worry."
And yeah, and then that also resonates with that Dhaata is married to these 4 wives, and there's like the phases of the moon. There's some technicalities, but we lay people could think about them as the full moon, the new moon, and the 2 half waxing, half waning. And that goes beautifully with what you just said, like the turning of the earth is Vidhātā. I'm like mind blown. But why I wanted to check in with you about the weaving story was because last time we spoke about this, were you also thinking about Dhaata as being DNA, being the spiral of DNA?
I always think of the DNA in all of this because of that double helix twisting shape, and it's twisting in 2 branches. I'm not a DNA expert, okay? I'm going to deal with broad strokes here. But there is the expression of the DNA, and there's the not expression. And of course, once upon a time, we believed that DNA was fixed, and that's it. And now we know that they can turn on and off, they can express or not express, and that we can affect that by how we're living and believing. And so many things we can actually affect our DNA expression, and it affects the DNA of our families around us even after we're no longer carrying them in our bodies. For generations. That's an epigenetic expression.
Yeah.
And so that could be a Dhaata Vidhātā. I don't know if that's where you were going. I'd love to know your.
I remember you saying that, and I was thinking how beautiful it was because of these women weaving. There's something about that imagery that reminds me of the DNA, maybe this double helix thing. But it also, for me, draws in these other stories that form part of this Aditya. So we were mentioning that there are other members of the crew, of the retinue of each Aditya. And there's a couple of stories in Dhaata Aditya that, to me, speak about the DNA and speak about the burden, the responsibility, the mission that we get from our lineage, from our genetic lineage. And I'm just going to briefly mention those because we could chat away for hours, and I can only hope that one day Nadamayi and I have the kind of lives where we can chat away for hours. But, for example, the Rishi associated with Dhaata Aditya is Pulastya Rishi, and he's in a unique position that he fathers both Kubera, who ends up being gifted Lanka by Brahma at a particular point in time. And Pulastya Rishi also it's his lineage that gives birth to Ravana, the Rakshasa who is going to reclaim Lanka and start the Ramayana story. So this Pulastya Rishi and his offspring, his lineage, this DNA that's being passed down, that story, is epically important to one of the major myths in India. And on the Rakshasa side, when they want to reclaim Lanka after it's been given to Kubera, they quite actively mix their DNA. It seems to be a strategic plan to mix it with Gandharvas. Yeah, guys, exactly. Mix it with a Gandharva, mix it with a Rishi. So you're getting this, and I think you were sharing with me that Ravana is a very accomplished.
Ravana is amazing. He does have that Gandharva energy. He is an accomplished, he's like the ultimate Renaissance man. He is a master of battle. He is a master of music and arts. He's a master of devotion. He's a master of romance and love. Like, he has this gigantic harem and they're all bonkers for him. Okay. So he's like Mr. Masculescence personified. And the rock star that all the girls are throwing themselves at. And he is phenomenal. He is absolutely phenomenal. And Ram, who incarnates to defeat him, is like a kid. He doesn't have the accomplishments. He hasn't been on the planet anywhere near as long. Ravana is his elder by a bit. And he's not a tapasji that he is. And he just doesn't have all the accomplishments. And he's like the kid who got kicked out of his own kingdom and is wandering around the forest, a wandering pauper prince with nothing but his brother and his wife. And this is going to be the one who overthrows the great king of Lanka, the most abundant, beautiful, rich place on the planet. Lanka is.
So I think it's really noticeable that in this Aditya, we have this story of, like you were saying, the hybrid breeding or whatever that seems to me, because then also on the Naga side of the story, so the Naga that goes with Dhaata Aditya is Vasuki Naga. And Vasuki feels responsible. That's that Dhaata word. This is the love of bearing. Vasuki feels responsible to try to save the fate of all of the Nagas. They've been cursed by the mother. If anybody's dealing with mother issues or mother curses, Dhaata Aditya might be the mythology that you're looking for. So Vasuki also does this strategic marrying, trying to get exactly the right being who will be able to make a difference and stop this snake sacrifice that's going to happen. So these two stories from really important members of the crew or the retinue make me think that Dhaata Aditya is telling us something about our DNA and about our mission here in this incarnation, because the yaksha for this Aditya is also about the body. So I think this is a very powerful Aditya in that way. If anybody's struggling with their legacy, what they're supposed to do, what they've come here to do, what they've inherited, Dhaata Aditya has a lot of really powerful stories. Yeah, so I was wondering if that feeds into your thought about Dhaata being DNA, in going right back to one of the first things that you said, that Dhaata is the kind of foundation you can't even see. This DNA, like the map, the architectural plan.
If the map is to be a child of to be, first of all, one with pure, undifferentiated love, and to be embarking on a journey from undifferentiation into differentiation and all the confusion that brings, you need a vehicle. And the DNA is the building block of that vehicle. And the DNA is going to give you the vehicle every single step of the way to serve that mission, to ultimately leave love and return to love. And so the little engine that could chugged its way along, if it said, love is the answer, love is the way, love is the answer, love is the way, love is the answer, love is the way, through all its DNA all the time, it would have a harmonious journey all the way around. But we get confused and the DNA doesn't express nicely all the time. And it can seem like this body is in my way. If only it would this, if only it would that. And that is when we know we're on that part of the journey in this big circle where we're forgetting the difference between love and desire, between innate completeness and this false sense of inner lack that says, I need something outside of myself to plug in and make me complete. And that's the desire system. I don't have something out there is what I need. If I have that, let me grab it, plug it in, I'll be all better. After I get this, and then we get conditional. And so to have the faith that no matter what this body is doing, that it is teaching me love. And the only way to get to love is with love. So love is the answer, love is the way. It is the answer and it is the path. Then we overcome the desires that have given it its apparent twists, its apparent crippledness, and wherever the imbalances are in the body, my eyes don't work so well. Okay, what's that teaching me about love? Everybody's got something, because if you don't need the lessons, you're not here. So the body is merciful and it's perfect. And if you believe in ultimately the answer is inside you, an internal locus of control, not an external one, somebody out there, something out there, some government out there, some weather pattern out there will make me complete. As long as you're not buying into that and you're like, my completeness is inside of me, that internal locus of control, then you're also believing that whatever body and family and system you incarnated to is the most effective, most merciful way for you to return to love in this particular lifetime. Then you start seeing the entire play as, how is this good for me to learn? How is this the best possible way for me to learn love right now?
Yeah.
Because that's what it's all trying to do constantly.
As I've been listening to you, Nadamayi, I'm thinking that there's even more stories in Dhaata Aditya about DNA, and maybe going back to what you touched on that I maybe want to hear more about, the way that we can choose what to switch on and switch off, and the way that can flow healing through to generations behind ahead. Because there's two other stories that are now coming to my mind about Dhaata Aditya, and one is about the Rakshasa, which is Hetih Rakshasa. And I just want to share part of that Hetih story, that Hetih is involved in a big battle with Vishnu at one point, where Vishnu has to create a whole new weapon in order to destroy Hetih, this Rakshasa. And with that blow of such force, which Hetih gives Dhaata Aditya the force, the protective force, the mother bear force that we need to protect our cubs from time to time. So Hetih is just all wonderful energy. In this battle with Vishnu, or this blow, Hetih is so hard. Hetih is separated, and all of the physical form of Hetih descends to earth and becomes the element iron that we have in the earth, wherever you find iron on planet Earth. But the essence of that force, that protective force, attaches itself to the chariot of Dhaata Aditya. So I want to highlight that story as a way of exploding the light out of one's DNA or something, for want of better expression. Because also on the Gandharva side, the Gandharva is Tumburu, and he's got a couple of really interesting stories. But one of them is that he is sent, I think, by Parvati to rescue a husband of one of Parvati's handmaidens, one of her ladies in waiting or support crew. This lady in waiting, or whatever it's called, word escapes me, husband has gone off the deep end. There's drinking, there's prostitution, there's treating his wife really badly. There's all manner of Adamic kind of behavior, and the wife is attached to this husband. She is experiencing the pain of this situation. And so Parvati asks this Gandharva from Dhaata Aditya to go and hold this. He's become a demon now. It's originally the husband. Hold him down, even using these nooses to hold him down. And then Tumburu sings for the first time the Shiva Purana to the husband in his demonic form. And through listening to this beautiful Gandharva song, even under duress, the true spirit of that human husband is expelled from the demonic forces, and he returns to his wife, and he goes on to live a beautiful and upstanding life. So I'm inspired that Dhaata Aditya, in this conversation that we're having about DNA, Dhaata Aditya also has these stories that maybe you were referring to about how we clean up our DNA or how we enlighten our DNA.
That's a really interesting way of looking at it. I'm just putting that on right now. And the first thing that comes to me is, to go back to Hetih, is that you'll notice in a recurring theme in a lot of these tales about demons, they all tend to want one thing, and that is immortality. Now, the irony is that we are immortal, but the body is not.
The yaksha being a little bit mischievous, yeah. The yaksha of the Dhaata yaksha is the body, yeah.
And so to confuse our identity, which is pure undifferentiated love, with a differentiated body that has DNA. And so here's this demon Hetih standing on the tippy toe doing tree pose for 1,000 years. It's quite an image, let me say. Storing up all this power so that his body never dies. And as soon as it's about the body and not our true essence, then that is desire. Because the body is differentiated. It is separate from. And if I'm setting my consciousness through a body and saying, I'm all there is, then I'm still that 3-year-old that's saying, my mother's love isn't giving me anything. I'm everything, that total egocentrism, only it hasn't matured. And it's trying to be the differentiated 3-year-old forever in this immortal state. And the mercy of love is that won't happen. There's, I want this given to me. I want this body to be immortal forever so I can be me and differentiated forever. Love is just saying, I'm too compassionate to allow that to happen. But we can accumulate a lot of power in our mistaken attempt to attain immortality in a body when our true identity is immortality, period. But to put it into this piece of changeness and try to make it unchangeable forever is an error. It's just simply an error. But to store up all that power, and then it's just so interesting that powers Dhaata's chariot. We're talking about Agni now.
Good point.
This is abstract stuff, okay? It's abstract stuff. But basically, Dhaata is just a giant light, and often symbolized as the sun. It's an obvious symbol. because it's literal in the physical universe, in the material universe. So we can see it. And Agni is that piece of the sun that's inside of us, so very often put in our solar plexus. Anybody? That little powerhouse right here, the xiphoid process, that when it's working well with our diaphragm, it is differentiating the energy in our body really nicely. And there's that Agni power. And so for that to be channelized through our bodies and for Hetih to be cleaved, the energy cleaved from the body, which those minerals will go down into the earth. They have to, if it's material, it stays in the material realm. And then the prana is more subtle. I'm assuming it's the prana that went into the chariot, but I'm not a metaphysical anatomy expert. Okay, so don't take my word for it. But it sounds like prana to me, going into the chariot to power that. So it went to the greater good.
This, to me, is speaking about that cleaning up of the DNA. Like, I think some of it, I'm always looking at these Adityas for their healing stories as well, I guess, because I won't apply them to astrology straight away. But for those of us who feel that we've incarnated with DNA that's dirty, it's got a burden.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we have been a human, if we're a human right now, we have inherited. So the advantage of being a human right now is that we exist as a human and we have that opportunity. But it also means that we've accumulated the most survival scars, generational trauma. The survival strategies, the cumulative survival strategies of all our ancestors has come forward with us. And it's stored in our little implicit memory back there in the old reptilian brain and the blah, blah, blah. I'm not good at physical anatomy either, but I know.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
A few terms. But it's really stored in implicit memory. We cannot get at it. And that is a survival advantage. It means evolution has worked really well. And we're here going, no, it's screwing me up. It's giving me PTSD. It's giving me terrible habits and I'm doing things I can't control and it's hurting other people and it's hurting me and there's so much suffering and I'm sorry, but that's actually a sign that your ancestors did a good job. And they gave you all these tools, but they're obsolete. And they like to talk about human 2.0, whatever they're calling it. Yeah, it's time for an upgrade now because we don't actually need those super brutal behaviors to survive anymore. We've solved a lot of the big problems. And I know everybody thinks that the planet's burning down and that life is going to end imminently. And that's part of the collective memory that we've inherited. And we're still echo chambering it out. Everything's going to end tomorrow. Freak out. The sky is falling. That's a bad habit that we've gotten into. And if we walk out the front door and look at how many people are living on the planet and are surviving till nighttime every single day, and how many of those are being fed at least one meal a day, that's remarkable. Yeah. How many of them are not being attacked every single day? We have subtle violence. I know we've got microaggressions, but it's a lot softer than life in the good old days when just aggression was normal. And women did have to live with horrible husbands because it was better than not having a horrible husband. And so we've come a long way and we just don't know how to get out of the habit of thinking everything is awful and this is the pictures that is being fed to us from our implicit memory that we've inherited. So yeah, we are healing our DNA. We are healing our ancestry. My own personal line, we're talking about my grandfather, who I knew and who largely raised me in the first 10 years of my life. He was in a wagon and they had to pass through hostile indigenous territories. And they were the bad guys and we were the good guys. But now for us to wake up, and he was a child. terrified for his life, literally, not a metaphor. And to see how he grew up and what he gave to us, the good, the bad, the ugly. And then we have that opportunity to change and transmute it. And that's within 2 generations.
Yeah, it is. It's really remarkable. The speed.
The speed. And the mental, emotional, social systems are more difficult to change. They're slower to change, but they are changing.
I see a lot of hope here in Dhaata Aditya for separating oneself in terms of this cleanup that we were just talking about, is supporting that exponential cleanup that these 2 stories from the Rakshasa and from the Gandharva, both of them speak about like instant cleanup.
And that's what's important. And this is what people don't really maybe know yet. Not even therapists. Okay, I have a therapy background, full disclosure, is that there is a function of mind that is how to unlock these implicit memories. And these implicit memories to me are the Naga energies, for sure. Underground, subterranean, subconscious, unconscious, that Naga energy. And the Nagas have a lot of energy. A lot. And when they're swallowing their own tails, they're just spinning out the same story over and over and over and over again, which is what most of them are doing. And guess what? When I said they're locked, I mean they're locked. The way that our brain has evolved is very good at keeping its evolutionarily protective tools under lock and key. And I can't just go in there like Garuda did and grab this snake and drag it out and think I'm going to get anywhere. Because it's infinite. And that's when you see people sitting on the Freudian couch for their entire lives and they're still dealing with their mother issues. But thanks to modern discoveries in how the mind works and therapeutic modalities that are more effective, there are ways to gently, okay, the word is gentle, in a container of safety and connection, gently invite those nagas one at a time, a little of one at a time, very often, to speak their truth. This is my mental emotional map of how the world works. And when it does this, I do this and I live. And it might be causing a lot of suffering for me and other people, but I'm preventing something even worse from happening by doing this. By what did that horrible man do to his wife? His wife prostitute out my wife and drink and people do those things because they are traumatized and because they think that if they not consciously, this is not conscious, they've inherited some implicit memories that were then passed on to them through forms of abuse and neglect that are terrible. And then they have to replicate them because they think if they don't, something even worse will happen. So to unlock those in that container of safety, just like Shiva reached down and Vasuki came out all by himself. And he crawled up and he says, let me just sit around your neck and I'm very safe and happy here. And you express them in the light of love. And then the brain has this incredibly innate capacity to say, oh, is that what was going on? That's really what was being believed in that implicit memory and was acting out. Guess what? I've grown up now and I know that's not true for me anymore. And the brain recognizes mismatches in its logic patterns, but it can't identify a mismatch logic unless it's expressing the old reality with the current mature understanding, which is based in a higher expression of love. And then it sees it and it just overwrites it. The little protein, it goes in there and it says, oh, edit that. That's not current for me anymore. And it's called memory reconsolidation. And it's just like, now, when I say you do have to practice it for the next week because we're organisms, we're not light switches. You practice it because it's been networked. You got to get it in to the whole, send the message to everybody and keep practicing it. Practice the new understanding so that it gets thoroughly worked in as much as possible. And that's how we can have 10,000 years of implicit memories passed down through these lineages that can be reconciled in 1, 2, or 3 generations.
It was beautiful to bring in all that Naga imagery, Nadamayi, because Vasuki Naga, which belongs to this Aditya, has some just great stories about how to heal from trauma. So Nadamayi has sown the seeds there. Hopefully, if you're interested to go find out more about this Aditya. As we're coming towards the end of our time together, Nadamayi, anything that you want to add that we haven't touched on yet today?
I think that I just want to return to what Svoboda was saying at the beginning of those beautiful quotes that you shared. Are those from The Greatness of Saturn? The second one. Yeah. There's so much in there.
It's such a great book.
Yeah, I've read it, and then there's more. The healing power of these myths is that they can do this, but it's to know how to use a myth is to do what we're doing. We're hashing it out, we're chewing on it, we're sucking the juice out of it again, but then go and sit with it and be quiet with it and let the interiorization of the mind just soften and breath. It's a contemplative practice, I feel, to sit with these myths. It's very healing to get with a group and discuss them. That has enormous power. It's very healing to read about them and study it. But that is not the part of the mind that is going to integrate. Permit the integration to be evoked. And so just sit and contemplate. And I've been contemplating some of these for decades. And they're
very rich. Yeah.
Richness that continues and continues to flow.
There's so many healing stories available in Dhaata. We talked about mother wound, any kind of issues with those stories. There's this demonic husband. There's the haves and the have-nots.
Well, and just the healing power of music and the fact that, how do you say his name, Tumburu, he is a symbol of the tanpura, the instrument that is the foundation of classical instrument music. Whoa, the drone that is just like always there. Talk about taking for granted. It's just the landscape on which the music is painted. And he's got like a horse's face and a human body. And they say he's supposed to look like a tanpura. I suppose if you turn him upside down. I'm not quite sure how that works. But to just say that the healing power of that music, and think about it, music puts you into a hypnotic state. And it is when we're in these hypnotic states that we can really have the healing power of the suggestions, the hypnotic suggestions that are sewn into these myths. I would suggest putting on a drone during your contemplation session.
Nadamayi, it's been lovely to have some time to go through some of our favorite parts of this mythology, this symbology. And I hope that everyone who's listening, if it inspires you, you'll go find out a little bit more about it. Please reach out and let us know what you're interested in and what resonates with you or you want to know more about. And I'm looking forward to next time we get together in Nadamayi, we're going to talk about Arima Aditya.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Nadamayi, and thanks, everybody. Look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.